Nobody makes me bleed my own blood. Nobody!
Hello everyone and welcome to Action RPG Build Guide Edition. Today I'm ready to drop on you my brand new bleed barb for Diablo 4. We use Rend, we use Rupture, we're applying Rend stacks through charge. It is an absolute blast to play and can push all content. As always, I will cover every single facet of the build. Everything is timestamped in the description below if you need to bounce around. Let's not waste any time and jump right into this. So starting off with some gameplay, I thought a pit 50 would be a nice round number. We're going to be charging all the time, which is going to be applying Rend's bleed stacks. We're going to be using Rupture for AoE and applying a 30% multiplicative to enemies. Rend is our main attack, and we do not use a generator for this build, which does require some figuring out, but I will break that down during the skills and the gear portion. But ultimately, pretty simple. Rend to hit enemies, charge to apply Rend stacks, charge also builds up your fury. We are using triple shout for all the benefits of triple shout and creating some dust devils for AoE. And then Rupture we are using for some AoE and giving us multiplicative damage. So this is Slither 149, pit 50. Rend to apply all those bleed stacks. Charge to keep our fury up. Rupture for a 30% multiplicative. And we just continue to go through it. And Slither for pit 50. We totally got it. You could see the bleed at the top. But Slither is done. So now let's break down the skill tree for our Rend Rupture. We are not using a generator, so 2 points anywhere, doesn't matter. When it comes to our core skills, you want to max out Rend, and then I have 1 point into Violent Rend. Now I'm using Violent Rend, that's the gameplay you just saw. If you are struggling with Fury whatsoever, you feel like you can't continuously use Rend, take this point out and put it right here into Furious Rend, which will give you 20 Fury back when you attack. It makes a huge difference. Well, minimum of 4 Fury back, but if you hit enough enemies, up to 20. As you come down, we are using Triple Shout. For our Rallying Cry, you want Tactical Rallying Cry. Anytime Rallying Cry is up, you will not have to worry about Fury. For our Challenging Shout, we are taking Tactical Challenging Shout, which when you take damage, you guessed it, you are going to build Fury. And then for our War Cry, you're going to get a huge damage multiplicative, and you are going to get Fortify that keeps you alive. Now, since we're in Triple Shout, we have 3 into Voice and 3 into Yell. Also up here, we have 3 into Imposing Presence and 3 into Vigor. Now, since we are using Charge and we have 5 points into it because it does a lot of damage and putting points into it lowers the cooldown, we're going to be able to charge because we are taking Power Charge basically every 4 or 5 seconds, and sometimes you can charge at will. And while you are charging, you're going to be applying Rend stacks and you're going to be getting Berserking. It just feels so much fun to play. So we have 3 into Aggressive Resistance and 3 into Battle Fervor. Now, as we come down here, we have 3 into Pit Fighter because you're going to be fighting at close range all the time and get some damage reduction. 1 into Thick Skin, 3 into Counteroffensive for that. Once you have that Fortify up, you get a multiplicative damage. We have 1 into Hamstring, 3 into Cut to the Bone. Obviously, this is a bleed build. And then we have 3 points for Rupture, 1 into the base and 1 into Fighter's Rupture. Now, if you were using a base skill, you would want Warrior's Rupture, but since we're using Rend, attack speed isn't a big deal, so you want Fighter's Rupture, which is going to give you 22% of your life back every time you use it. And again, the cooldown on this is 7 seconds, but realistically, you could probably use it every 4 seconds. Coming down, nothing in your core skills. And then for the key passive, we are using Gushing Wounds. It's a bleed build. Those are the skills. Now, when it comes to weapon selection, we are not using weapon swap on this build. So for Rend, you want 2-handed slashing. For Charge, you want 2-handed slashing. And for Rupture, you want 2-handed slashing. Just keep it very, very simple. Also, when you are looking at your weapon expertise, the technique that you want to take is 2-handed axe expertise. It's going to give you 10% multiplicative damage to vulnerable enemies. And in this build, enemies are always going to be vulnerable. It is unequivocally the best. So now let's break down the Paragon points, and I will go slow board by board. So if you need a screenshot or pause, you can do that. So on the starting board, we do want exploit. Very important. We need to make enemies vulnerable, and this is going to help. And we're going to go up the left side of the tree. Now, If you are struggling with getting to your 9200 armor, you can go up the right side of the tree and get 200 armor. I was already at that, so I used the left side of the tree, but just know you can make this change if you need added armor. As we come to the second board, we are in Carnage. And the glyph that we are using is Might. This is going to give us damage reduction. This is going to give us damage while berserking. And this is going to give us multiplicative damage to two-handed weapons. Again, we're using two-handed slashing. Now, the final points that I put into this board. So at the end of level 100, I took these nodes up here, which gave us cold resistance. This is actually going to give you 35% cold resistance. So if you don't need cold resistance, you also don't need to take these points, but I did. As you move to the left for board number 3, this board is Decimator. And the glyph that we are using is Ire. This is damage while berserking and DR from elite enemies while berserking, and charge is going to make it so that we are always berserking. We are then moving on to board number 4. As we come down right here, this board is Blood Rage, and the glyph that we are using is Disembowel. Now, Disembowel is going to make it killing a bleeding enemy. All enemies will be bleeding, has a 10% chance to reduce the cooldowns of your non-ultimate active skills by 1 second. Now, Disembowel, this glyph is huge. Obviously, you're killing enemies all the time, and there's a 1 in 10 chance that it's going to lower your charge, it's going to lower your rupture, or it's going to lower your your shouts. So a lot of the times, sometimes I can use charge at will because of this glyph. It is awesome. Moving on to board number 5. And this board is Hemo. And the glyph that we are using is Twister. Now, Twister can be switched out for Undaunted. That is a choice you need to make. Do you want more damage or do you want more survivability? Right now, we are spec'd into Twister because we are using Dust Devils with our shouts, and you get a multiplicative damage after you create a Dust Devil, but that is a choice you will have to make. I currently like it as Twister. And then for our final board down here, board number 6, we're using Warbringer. And the glyph that we are taking is Territorial. This is damage to close enemies and just damage reduction from close. That is the Paragon boards. So now let's talk gear for this Bleed Barb. And this is unequivocally the most uniques I have used for any build inside of Diablo 4. And I'll take you through all of them. We are using a Tusk Helm. Again, since we have berserking all the time and you're using charge, you are going to be getting this bonus of 15% multiplicative, Fury generation, and cooldown reduction. This helps you with everything you do, including being able to use Rend all the time. But just know this is not required. We are using Rage Chest. Inflicting bleed on an enemy has a 32% chance to reduce the cooldowns of your skills by 1 second, and this can roll as high as 40%. So again, when it comes to cooldown reduction, this is absolutely awesome. It is designed for this build. We are also using the new Yen's Blessings boots, and this is casting a skill has up to a 60% chance to cast a non-mobility ultimate skill that is currently on cooldown. This will automatically sometimes cast Rupture, and it's going to be casting your shouts that are on cooldown every 8 seconds. It's amazing, but these 3 are not required. Also, for our two-handed slashing, we are using Fields of Crimson. This is going to give you as high as a 32% reduction to the cooldown of your Rupture, and it's going to inflict 2200 damage in a blood pool. An enemy standing in that blood pool will take 30% multiplicative damage, which again is huge, but not required. So I would say that this sword, these boots, this chest, and this helmet are best in slot. 1, 2, 3, 4. Last time I'm going to say it, not required. Now, the 2 that are required, you have to have a Ring of the Ravenous. This falls from, I believe, Beast in the Ice. And this is going to make it where Rend's duration is increased by 4%. I got a perfectly rolled one. And damaging enemies with your brawling skills applies 2 attacks of Rend's Bleed. This can only occur every 4 seconds. What is the cooldown on charge? It's about 4 to 5 seconds, which means when you use charge, which is a brawling skill, all that damage you have on your Rend is applied. Absolutely required for this build to work. The other item that is required is Will Pants, and the reason why is this does a lot of good, but the main thing it does is when you become unstoppable, you gain 50 of your primary resource. Now again, since we are not using a generator, Rend can be a very expensive skill, but what's great is that since you can charge every 4 or 5 seconds, that's going to give you 50 fury every 4 or 5 seconds. This is what really unlocks not being able to need a generator. So those are the uniques for the build. Now I will take you through the legendary aspects. On our gloves, we are using Berserk Ripping, which is as high as 30% of your base damage. Delta is bleeding damage over time, and we're berserking all the time. For our ring, we are using Bold Chieftains, which is, of course, whenever you cast a shout, its cooldown is reduced by 2 seconds to be able to can use your shouts more. And then an absolutely required aspect, required, will not work without it, is this newer Rend aspect. You have up to a 90% chance to gain 20 fury when Rend deals direct damage to at least one bleeding enemy. Enemies are always going to be bleeding, whether it's they're standing in a Rupture blood pool, whether ripping is working, whether you are charging, whether you're hitting them with the second strike of Rend. And every time basically you lucky hit, you're going to get that fury back with Rend. Again, it took a lot to make sure that we don't need a basic skill, but this is required. When we go through the weapons, we are using Edgemaster. We are using Charge Calls Forth for Ancients. This is huge. And we are using your Shouts Create Dusk Devils. Now, this is not a Dust Devil build, even though we are using Twister, but I will say, we shout so often. Sometimes it's triple shout, triple shout, triple shout. I mean, back to back to back, that you might as well just take advantage of it, of how often you are shouting, and it just helps with clear speed and moving through the maps quicker. Now, when it comes to gems, right now I've wasted so many gems, so you'll notice that they're not all maxed, and I don't have enough sockets. But that being said, for your armor, you want rubies for life. For your weapons, you actually want emeralds for critical strike damage. And then on your jewelry, you just want to take whatever you need to get your resistances. So this is what you do with the barb. You have lots of options, but what is required? Will Pants, Ravenous Ring, and this Rend legendary aspect. If you have those 3, you can make this work. All right, everyone, that's the build guide. What do you think of my new Rend Rupture Bleed Barb for Diablo 4? Is there anything I miss? Is there anything I do to take this to the next level? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. 2 asks at the end of the video. Ask number 1, I'm hoping today is the day I have earned your subscription. I'm hoping today is the day you make the decision to push that little red button. I would really appreciate it, but of course, only if you think I've earned it. And if I haven't earned it, I'm going to work harder for you. Ask number 2, check out my Patreon. Thank you to the first 131 members that have signed up. I get asked all the time, what's the best way to support? And Patreon truly is it. You get access to movie night, you get access to game night, you get access to the VIP lounge, lots of exclusive content, and it just supports the channel. So I would really, really appreciate it. First link in the description. I'm done. Hopefully you were entertained or at least learned something. Aaron, out.